Hi guys, we are live inside the Fox 5 DC digital newsroom here, and you're looking at a live video right now. Former President Bill Clinton paying his respects to Billy Graham, who passed away last week at the age of 99. Now, we were showing this sort of steady stream from yesterday. You can see his casket is there. This is at the Billy Graham Library in Charlotte, North Carolina. Many former officials and presidents have come by. Yesterday, we took a quick live stream of former President George W. Bush do the same thing, but you can see here, Billy Graham was a friend to so many presidents, so many leaders here in Washington, among other leaders just in general, civil rights activists and whatnot. He will be lying here in the library for another day or so, and then he'll be transported up to the U.S. Capitol Rotunda, where he will lie in honor, not unlike many other officials and members of Capitol Hill who have passed away, who end up lying there for visitors to pay their respects. It's quite an honor to do so. So that's where this casket will be transported in the coming day or so, I believe, and then to be transported back down to be buried. And this is a live look right now. You can see Bill Clinton there on the left side. Not so much sound on this because this is sort of an overarching aerial camera that is just continuous, but we're going to let you kind of watch this, take it in, and give you some exterior shots as well of what this library looks like from the outside in this split screen in just a second here. right, guys, so again, you are watching this sort of live, steady stream here of people coming in to the Billy Graham Library to pay respects to Billy Graham's body there, which is in his own library there in Charlotte for another day or so before he comes up to D.C. to lie in honor at the Rotunda here at the U.S. Capitol. And you can see former President Clinton there just speaking with another gentleman, a couple other people, but pretty heavily sort of secluded for them and guarded outside. These are the exteriors, again, that we were showing you earlier. So we'll kind of flash throughout this scene throughout the day so you can kind of get a taste of to what is going on down there in Charlotte. Meanwhile, up here in Capitol Hill, let's flash it back to D.C. There is a Democratic day of action for net neutrality on the Hill. Right now I see Cory Booker. It looks like he just left the podium, but we're going to go over there and see what they're talking about. This is a rally outside of the Capitol here in D.C. and Capitol Hill.
Don't take them away.
Oh, no, I won't. Aloha, everyone.
Aloha.
What we're talking about, putting it in Washington, D.C. terms, we'll all understand. What the FCC is doing is they're creating gatekeepers for pay-to-play on the internet. That's really what it's about. So the internet service providers, we call them ISPs, are the gatekeepers, and they are going to make people pay to play. This is what the Trump FCC is now doing. The FCC's decision to rescind net neutrality will allow what we call the cableization of the internet. What does the cableization mean? It means that ISPs operate with total control over the content of their networks, and by rescinding it, the FCC grants the ISP to manage how Americans access and engage with internet content and applications. The original design of the internet was to allow for maximum competition between all users. It is an invention that uniquely captures the American values and expressions of a free market. Remember those things called American values? Not pay to play for the internet? Net neutrality is about protecting that original design and the market competition among internet content applications that has driven our country to be more innovative and prosperous. This is what we're losing. We're losing the generations of innovation and prosperity. So please help us to convince them that they cannot rescind the net neutrality rules. Thank you.
Beautiful. From New Hampshire, great Maggie Hassan.
Thanks, Eddie. Well, I too am just here to say that we need to restore net neutrality. Access to a free and open internet is at the forefront of the lives of nearly every single American. Here we have a country based on the value that every single one of us matters and counts, and the Trump FCC says not so fast. You don't matter, you don't count unless you can pay. Consumers, entrepreneurs, innovative small businesses, and in turn our nation's economy have all benefited from equal access to content on the internet, no matter the internet service provider. And an open internet has created an even playing field online for new and exciting ideas to thrive. Net neutrality has guaranteed this access. Without net neutrality, the voices of traditionally underrepresented people will lose out. The ability to communicate and organize online, like we've seen with the women's marches and rallies across the nation, is at risk. Innovation will be stifled and small businesses will be hurt. I just left a hearing at the Health Committee where we were talking about the importance of data to fight the opioid epidemic. Think about slowing the flow of that data in this critical time as we try to turn the tide on that epidemic. We are here today to make clear that we will not stop fighting for net neutrality, and we will continue to push our colleagues to support our bipartisan effort to overturn the FCC's backward and harmful decision. We just need one more vote. Thank you.
And our rising star in the United States Senate, Senator Tina Smith.
Thank you. And Thank you. Well, as you can see, I dressed for Minnesota today. I want to give you one example of why net neutrality matters so much. This is an example from a small town in northern Minnesota called Fergus Falls. I met there an entrepreneur, a father. He and his wife and their young children wanted to move back to the farmhouse that his wife's grandmother had once lived in. But he worked in finance in the Twin Cities. But because that farmhouse was connected to broadband, he was able to run his business that had transactions all over the world. He was able to run it from that farmhouse. And then at the end of the day, if the weather wasn't too bad, he could walk out to the end of his long driveway and meet his kids when they got off from school. He was able to do that all because of a free and open internet, net neutrality. And he was able to do that because no big company, thousands of miles away, got to decide how his business worked, got to decide what content he had access to, and got to decide how fast it comes to him. I strongly support this. I have only been in this Senate for around 2 months, but I am so proud to join my colleagues, including Senator Klobuchar, a great consumer champion from Minnesota, to provide another vote for net neutrality. Thank you.
Thank you. And from California, Jerry McNerney.
Thank you, Senator. So I've heard from thousands of my constituents who need net neutrality. They want net neutrality. They demand net neutrality. We will have to have net neutrality. Basically, it comes down to this. If you're a small business owner, then you can count on being shoved aside if we don't have net neutrality. It's going to hurt our small business. It's going to hurt innovation. But look at it from a personal point of view. If you like your cable bill, if you like the way it's itemized for you to get the different cable services, then you're going to love what happens when net neutrality goes away, because you're going to have to pay for Facebook. You're going to have to pay for Google. You're going to have to pay for all of these services individually or bundled together. It's going to raise your rates. And moreover, if you disagree with your cable provider, they can cut you out. They can eliminate you. That's what net neutrality means. It means free, open access to the internet. We demand net neutrality. We demand to keep net neutrality. We're going to do everything we can to prevent the Federal Communication Commission from taking that right away from us. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Now we're going to hear from former Federal Communications Commissioner Michael Copps.
Thank you and good morning, and thanks to my friend and really my hero, Ed Markey, for bringing us all together, and all the illustrious members of Congress who have come out today in support of what he's trying to do. How ridiculous is it that with 70% of the American people supporting network neutrality and an open internet, we have only one member of the Republican Party prepared to vote for the resolution of disapproval under the Congressional Review Act? I tell you, if I was a candidate running for office in 2018, with all the baggage that's out there for a lot of the people from this party, I don't think I would be wanting, as part of my platform, opposition to an open internet. This issue is such a no-brainer, and it has been a no-brainer for so many years. And you don't have to drill down very far to understand why that is so. It's because of the outrageous influence of the big ISP gatekeepers, Comcast and AT&T and Verizon, and the pails full of money that they keep pouring into our tainted political bloodstream. Absent that power, absent that money, this would not be an issue. We would not be here talking about it today. We wouldn't be having a press conference. We would have had good net neutrality rules on the record years and years ago. We wouldn't be having this fight. But we are having this fight, and now it's up to all of us, you and me, to make our voices heard over there and over there, asking our members of Congress, no, not asking, insisting from our members of Congress that they get behind this resolution of disapproval. Tell them that your vote in the next election depends upon how they vote now. And tell them that this has become the free speech issue of our time. And if they can't stand up for free speech, then they're not standing up for you, they're not standing up for our country, and they're not standing up for democracy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Michael. Next, we're going to hear from Evan Greer for Fight for the Future.
Thank you all for being here. This is an important day. Fight for the Future, with our allies at Demand Progress, Free Press, and many other organizations, represent millions of people. And many of those people are Republicans, they're libertarians, they're conservatives. And they care about net neutrality because they don't want their cable company to decide where they can get their news, where they can get information, how they listen to music, what websites and apps they can use. This is not a partisan issue outside of Washington, D.C. And the sooner Republicans in the Senate and House get that memo, the better off they'll be in 2018. This CRA will be a simple up or down vote on the future of the free and open internet. This is not just about how quickly our videos load. The internet is the most powerful tool we have to combat authoritarianism and tyranny, to combat corruption, to hold powerful people and institutions accountable. This is about the future of freedom of expression and the future of our democracy. If you're a member of Congress, you may hear from lobbyists from large telecom companies and also large tech companies who may tell you that you can hide from this CRA by supporting alternative legislation that purports to protect internet users. I will tell you right now, those lobbyists are not the ones who will vote for you. Those lobbyists do not have access to large numbers of your constituents. We have organized many of the largest online protests in history. Millions of people have used our website, battleforthenet.com, to contact their legislators. And we will ensure that all of those people know exactly how every single member of Congress votes on this CRA. If you're a senator and you fail to support the CRA when it comes to a vote, you will be seen as voting against the internet. If you're a representative and you fail to support the discharge petition to bring the CRA to a vote in the House, you will be seen as voting against the free and open internet. The internet has changed the rules for what is and isn't possible here in Washington, D.C. It's given ordinary people a new type of power that they've never had before, and they're willing to fight to defend it. We will fight for net neutrality, and we will win. Thank you.
Thank you, Evan. And finally, we're going to hear from Stephen Renderos of the National Hispanic Media Coalition. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Stephen Renderos. I'm the organizing director with the Center for Media Justice, but I'm also up here alongside my brothers and sisters of the Voices for Internet Freedom Coalition, which includes groups like the National Hispanic Media Coalition, Color of Change, and Free Press, 18 Million Rising, and many others. Simply put, we represent people of color around this issue on net neutrality, and we care about net neutrality because net neutrality prevents discrimination. We come from communities who are very used to systematic discrimination that gives us access to poorer schools, to poor housing, to poor education, to a poor criminal justice system. And the internet is one of the few places where we're not discriminated against. And it empowers us. It empowers women like Tarana Burke to start a hashtag to deal with sexual violence in this country. It empowers young students all over the country to respond to the Parkland shooting by mobilizing and walking out of their schools and demanding gun reform. It empowers our communities to have a voice, and without that, this fight is not about bits and bytes and Facebook and Google. It is about people's civil rights. And that's why we stand up here alongside all our leaders in Congress who are being champions on this issue to demand not just one more vote, but all the votes. Stand on the right side of history, vote for the CRA, and support net neutrality.
Hi guys, if you are joining us, we're live in the DC newsroom here at Fox 5 DC Digital, and you're watching this rally on Capitol Hill. Democrats getting together to talk net neutrality right outside of the Capitol there. And then lower left-hand corner of your screen, that's former President Bill Clinton paying his respects to Billy Graham in the Billy Graham Library, where Graham's casket now lies, before tomorrow when it'll be transported up here to DC to lie in the Capitol Rotunda. So we're going to let this kind of rally go on a little longer, and then we'll take it back into the newsroom to talk some other hot topics, including the fact that breaking, we just found out that President Trump has tapped one of his former digital advisors to be campaign manager for his 2020 re-election bid, which underscores his intentions to possibly run again for a term. That just came out. We also have some other stuff coming up. Vice President Pence is slated to be in Nashville, Tennessee later today. He's going to be making a pro-life speech at the Susan B. Anthony List Life Issues Institute down there in Nashville. So a couple of live events that are on our radar for today, barring anything else that's breaking or that comes into us, breaking news and live events here on our stream here on Fox 5 Live. So thanks for joining us here. You can feel free to comment in the live chat box on the right corner of your screen. We want to hear from you, where you're watching from. And for now, enjoy these couple of feeds, guys.
It's 60 legislative days, so we're going to pick the date that we think works the best, but we need time to stop this campaign. So many days to go by before you force the vote. Is there How many Republicans do you think are seriously considering separating from 5 to 8 or no? I'm not going to. But I think by the time.
All right, guys, you are continuing to watch former President Bill Clinton there. He's gathering with some folks outside of where Billy Graham's casket is lying. You can see just down there on the left side is Franklin Graham, of course, Billy Graham's son. Now, we're just hearing word that Bill Clinton may be making some remarks after this visit. There is a podium and some sort of microphone set up, is what we're hearing. So if he does do that, we'll bring that to you live. Continuing on with this shot here as Bill Clinton visits Billy Graham's casket. Again, this is all in Charlotte, North Carolina, a live video of what's going on down there. Just later this week, in about a day or so, his body will be transported up here to where we are in D.C. to the U.S. Capitol Rotunda as well. So we've been seeing sort of notables going through to pay their respects over the past few days. Former President George W. Bush was yesterday, and then others as well. So we have this sort of continuing steady stream of video and visitors to Billy Graham in Charlotte. So we'll see if he does end up making some remarks, and if so, we'll make sure we bring that to you live with the sound and everything before we switch up gears and bring it to something else.
First of all, I would like to thank Reverend Franklin Graham and the Graham family for making me feel welcome. And so I'm glad to be back in this magnificent spot for the first time since I came to the dedication. And I'm just one of millions, maybe hundreds of millions of people who, in their own way, will find some way to say thank you and goodbye to Billy Graham. When I was 11 years old, 60 years ago, my Sunday school teacher, a wonderful man who drove a bread truck for his day job, took me and another couple of kids in our class to War Memorial Stadium in Little Rock, Arkansas for Billy Graham's crusade. I was so excited for reasons that are too often lost to history. The year before, Little Rock Central High School had been integrated. The town was in the state were in turmoil. The next year, some people were so resistant they closed the schools, and the White Citizens Council tried to get Billy Graham to preach to a segregated audience. And he said that God didn't see us that way, and if that were going to be the rules, he would have to cancel the crusade and tell people why he did it. And they folded quick. And so when I came there, it wasn't, as I remember, in the newspaper, but everybody knew. And the whole state had been torn up. And we had an unusually significant number of African Americans there that week because they all knew, too, what stand he had taken. And when he gave the invitation, and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people came down in tears together, it had a profound effect on me. And I never knew if I'd ever get to meet Billy Graham. I just was a kid. Then 30 years later, he came back to Little Rock, and I was the governor. And he had had a long relationship with the man who was the pastor of my church who didn't have long to live. And we wanted to go visit him, so I took him to visit him. Not before a vast crowd, but in a tiny living room of a Baptist preacher with a very modest income. I listened to him talk to an old friend about faith and life and death. It was also one of the most memorable experiences of my life. So I'm just here as another person, grateful. I have read the many things that contemporary people have said, some laudatory, some not so laudatory. I saw a story today saying, you know, if you're a preacher, you got to be careful getting too close with politicians. I agree with that. But don't forget, those of us who are Christians believe in a God of second chances, and the politicians need those more than anybody else. So you've got to cut them a little slack for trying to give a willing ear and an open heart without regard to his political preferences. Kelly and I were glad to have him in the White House a couple of times, but mostly I was glad to see that in that little room, he was the same person I saw when I was 11 at the great big football field. And I think that's what says a lot. I think he was a profoundly good man who conveyed a simple belief that we can claim kinship with God by asking. And while we all believe that it's faith plus nothing. He wasn't faith plus nothing. He lived. He shows faith by his works and by his life. And for me, every time I think about him, I'd be 11 again. Having no idea how my life would turn out. Grateful that in that one moment when it would have been easier not to do it, he actually lived his faith. So, thank you. I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
All right, guys, and apologies on their end. That sound was a little bit overmodulated, unfortunately, but hopefully you were able to take in his extemporaneous words there. Of course, just a little off-the-cuff story and some anecdotes from former President Bill Clinton about his friendship with and visits to Billy Graham. And yeah, hopefully you were able to hear that. I know the audio was a little bit rough on that, a little overmodulated, but again, former President Bill Clinton visiting Charlotte, North Carolina. There's Franklin Graham waving him off, and we'll let you finish out this scene for now, and then we'll come back into another story. Guys, back in the newsroom here at our digital desk. Thanks for hanging out with us on the stream. Let's go over to a little bit of sports news now. We had, like I said, these two feeds coming in from Charlotte from Billy Graham's casket where he is lying. We're probably going to have those cameras up for the remainder of the day into tomorrow as he is moved to Washington, D.C. Of course, he will come and lie in honor at the U.S. Capitol Rotunda, which is a pretty big deal. It's only for the most notable people that get to do that. And so you've seen, like I said, former politicians and presidents come and pay their respects in that speech from Bill Clinton, just off the cuff, and words about his experience with Billy Graham. All right, so in a little sports news, the Dallas Mavericks NBA team, they've been under fire for quite a long time about sexual assault in their front office. And today, Mark Cuban, the owner of the Dallas Mavericks, he's an investor and businessman, known obviously as owner, is saying he's going to stay, but he is replacing the CEO who was under fire for some domestic assault allegations and sexual misconduct in the office of the team. So here today, he had a brief statement to announce a new CEO and sort of what they're going to be doing to sort of, I guess, wash over some of these allegations and make sure that it comes to light and that the organization stays a great place for people to work at and people do want to stay with them. By naming this new CEO, changing up the leadership, they're hoping to sort of put that statement across. So let's hear from Mark Cuban, the owner, just a few moments ago.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much. Before we do a quick introduction, I know Mark wants to make a brief statement here, and then I'll introduce Cynthia, and then we'll take questions for her.
Actually, my statement is a little bit different. I just want to say that the NBA lost someone special yesterday when a very good friend of mine, Dan Fagan, was killed in a car crash. And I just want everybody to know just how important he was, not just to me and to the Mavericks, but to the entire NBA and to all of his clients. There aren't enough superlatives to say what a good guy he was. So I just wanted him to, he would have been happy that he was remembered. And so I just wanted to say something. With that, I'll turn it over to Sarah for an introduction.
I'm going to give a quick intro of Cynthia because I think it's really, we're really lucky to have her, and reading over her bio and her resume is pretty incredible. Cynthia brings over 30 years of experience specializing in leadership, diversity, and inclusion, and culture transformation. Most recently, she served as the Senior Vice President of Human Resources and the Chief Diversity Officer at AT&T. During her tenure at AT&T, the company was named for the first time as one of Fortune 100's best places to work and achieved the #3 ranking on Diversity Inc.'s 2017 Top 50 list. Please welcome Cynthia Marshall as the new interim CEO of the Dallas Mavericks.
Thank you, Sarah. What I'd like to do is just to make a brief statement, brief as in about 3 minutes, and then I will just open it up for questions. So thank you, Sarah, for such a warm introduction. In my wildest dreams, and I've had some pretty big dreams and some wild dreams in my life, I never saw this coming. While I grew up playing sports, supporting my 3 children in their sports endeavors, and can often be found cheering for my favorite sports teams, all of that is very different from receiving a call from the owner of an NBA team with a passionate, and I can't stress that enough, with a passionate and heartfelt invitation to contribute to sports and the community in a very unique way. I'm honored to have been asked by Mark to join him in addressing some very serious issues. I'm saddened, and I'll say that again, I'm very saddened that issues of domestic violence and sexual harassment are so prominent in our society, and allegations have surfaced once again in our organization. Mark has been transparent and accountable in his remarks to the media, but I want you to know behind the scenes, we are also responding. Although we are in the early stages of our response, we have identified 3 immediate areas of focus: the investigation, culture transformation, and operational effectiveness. So allow me to briefly review all three of those areas. Regarding the investigation, independent investigators are in the process of conducting interviews with current and former, we're covering both, current and former employees. The purpose of the interviews is to make sure that all issues and allegations are surfaced and addressed. We need everything to come out. Allegations will be thoroughly investigated, and any required disciplinary action will be administered swiftly, very swiftly. Culture transformation. We've developed a plan focused on fostering an inclusive and supportive culture in the organization. What I mean by inclusive is a work environment where all cultures, genders, abilities, and backgrounds are valued and celebrated. People are respected and treated fairly. A culture where pay is equitable for men and women. All employees have access to opportunities. Diversity is represented in all parts of the organization and at all levels. It's a workplace where there is zero tolerance. Let me repeat that. I just covered this with the team this afternoon. A place where there is zero tolerance for sexual harassment, domestic violence, or any type of inappropriate behavior. The third area is operational effectiveness. We are committed to running a business of excellence with systems, processes, and policies that are easy to navigate and that meet the needs of our employees and our customers. Specifically, we are starting with improving our employee complaint process. Our goal is for the Dallas Mavericks organization to be a great place to work for everyone, not for a few people, but for everyone. A place of character and integrity where individuals are held accountable for their actions. Let me close my prepared remarks by thanking a few people. I want to say thank you to the women who raised their voices and told their stories. Let me say that again. Thank you, women who told your stories and who raised your voice. Thank you to the Dallas Maverick employees who are coming to work each day and performing with excellence during a very challenging time. I've met with the team, and I will tell you what I walked into last week and what I saw today are very committed people, many who have given 20, 30, 36 years to this fine organization. They are wonderful, wonderful people. I want to say thank you to our fans who have continued to show up. And thanks to those who have given us feedback and criticism. And you can well imagine we've received a lot of it. We will be better because of it. We are determined to come out better because of this. Thank you.
Anybody that has questions for Cynthia, please raise your hand. We've got 2 mics. Alan Scott will bring them to you.
And let me say, I do go by Cent, C-Y-N-T, as in heaven sent.
Ms. Marshall, can you speak to your background growing up and a difficult incident and how it may have formed you both in your faith and in your business?
Yes, for those of you who don't know, I grew up in the Easter Hill Public Housing Projects in Richmond, California. My parents left Birmingham, Alabama when I was a baby. And Birmingham is important to me because the church that was bombed in Birmingham, where the 4 girls lost their lives, Cynthia, Carol, and Addie, that was my mother's church. So that connection is important to me. But they went to the Bay Area. I grew up in a housing project. I saw some very bad things in the housing project. Saw my father shoot a man in the head in self-defense when I was 11 years old because the young man was pointing a pistol at me. And then 4 years later, my father left us. And he left us with very, very little. And I had a broken nose. And as you probably know, I was escorted to school by a uniformed police officer, which is why I love the police. I have my band on, hashtag BB725. That's to honor the 5 fallen Dallas police officers and the 2 young men who they were allowing us to have a protest for. So very important to me. Domestic violence has been a part of our family, unfortunately. And I have personally been on the other end of it, and there's just no place for it. So is that the situation? Because, you know, I've been through a lot. I've had cancer. I mean, I can tell it all now. Is that the situation you were referring to? Yes, but thank goodness we had people to rally around us. police officers and others, and it was dealt with. And I hope you can see we came out okay. But one thing I did learn in that process, it was important for my mother to tell her story and to speak up. And my mother finally gave me permission a few years ago in a speech to tell her story. She said, I want that story told because maybe it will help save somebody. So this is very important. When I met with Mark last week, he had passion about this and about the culture and about making sure this never happens again. And I told him I share that passion for a lot of reasons. So we're in this together. I'm doing this obviously because a very passionate and heartfelt plea was made. It's also personal, and I want to do it for the sisterhood.
Will you have an opportunity to become the full-time CEO? The release said you're interim, and then also, did you happen to know Tredim Usry since you've been involved in the area and and he's obviously been involved with a lot of high-ranking, especially African-American officials in the city of Dallas?
No, I do not know him. I don't know him, and I will have that opportunity to be the full-time CEO.
I'm curious, you've done this for right over here, you've done this a lot for a long, long time. Where does this rate on the reconstruction scale in terms of having to rebuild a culture and clearly there are some residual hangovers from everything that's gone on?
Keep in mind that, of course...
And also, how do you go about this sort of thing?
Yes. Keep in mind that I worked for AT&T for 36 years in a variety of jobs with very, very large teams. And just because of the nature of our industry, we've had to transform the culture, we've had to transform skill sets. So transformation is a part of what I have been doing for a long time with the help of a lot of people. I mean, I will say sin is not coming in here to be the savior of the world. What I have learned is that it takes a team, it takes a village, and we will get this done. We're talking about 140 people, but a culture that transcends even beyond just our workplace. And so where it ranks, I would say it's probably somewhere in the middle. I mean, we've gone through a lot. You know that. You followed AT&T. We've gone through a lot. So I don't think it's something that can't be done. In fact, I'm excited. We will do this. We will do this. And I'm asking your help. I'm asking everyone in here to help us do this, to help write stories and tell stories that will help transform the culture, that will respect the 140 people who are working hard every day in our organization, but also to tell this story so that it will never happen again. That's what Mark wants. I will fail if we're in a headline a year from now. I will fail. I will have failed. The team will have failed. Thank you for your question.
You outlined some key areas and places for change in the organization. In your initial analysis, what do you think will be the most challenging thing that faces you?
I think, first of all, we have to really make sure that our zero tolerance approach is understood by everybody. And I met with the team this afternoon to just talk a little bit about what I mean about diversity and inclusion, with inclusion coming first. And sometimes I describe it as it's not just about counting the numbers, which is diversity. We focus a lot on representation. But inclusion is about making the numbers count. It's about making sure that every individual is respected, is treated fairly, is invited to be in meetings, invited to participate, that we don't have biases and stereotypes, because we bring baggage. Sometimes you just bring baggage from when you wake up in the morning. But when you walk into the doors of the Dallas Mavericks, we have to make sure everybody's included. So I think that's going to be a big challenge. And it's not just a challenge with the Dallas Mavericks. I think it's a challenge in corporate America. It's a challenge in the world, period, to make sure that it's not just about the mix and what people look like, but to make sure they have a sense of belonging at work. And so I think what you will see is a shift in general with people focused more on inclusion. And I am determined, Mark is determined, that the Dallas Mavericks will be the standard. We're laying out a vision that says by 2019, the Dallas Mavericks will be the standard. We will be leading the way in inclusion and diversity. We will focus on character. In fact, I told our team today, it's all about respect and fairness. We're focused on character, respect, authenticity, fairness, teamwork, and safety. And when I say safety, I mean physical and emotional safety. So I think just getting those values into the culture is not easy, but we will get there. The operational effectiveness, we have fabulous people. We will put complaint processes in place. There are tools out there that we will use. We will get that organized pretty quickly. The cultural transformation piece will be the biggest. Thanks for the question.
Hi, you just touched on the complaint process. Can you explain a little bit about what it has been like in the past for employees to make these types of complaints to the higher-ups and what changes are going to be made under your watch?
I actually don't know the answer to that question. I haven't been on board long enough to know what process is in place, what are the mechanics to that process. What I will tell you is based on what I have been told and what I've read, and I do read the stuff that you guys write, but also what Mark has told me, the process failed. The process failed somewhere, and I don't know if it was because the process wasn't robust. I mean, I don't know why it failed. And so that's what we have to dig out. And so that's why I'm going to be meeting one-on-one with every single employee of the organization. I'm calling it my own March Madness. Every single employee, I will be meeting with them to ask a series of questions about the culture. Because one thing we want is a speak-up culture. We want a speak-up culture where people aren't retaliated against. I want to know if we have that. And if we do, how do you know how to report a process? What's the procedure? What systems do we have in place? If you don't want to do it there, do you know, I know the NBA just came out with something, is there a number? Do you know to call that number? Is it anonymous? I don't know any of those answers, but I am going to be asking those questions over the next couple of weeks. And then you can come back and see me and I'll give you all the answers because I'll have them at that point.
This is for both Sen and Mark. What will the working relationship be like between you two, and how involved on a day-to-day basis, Mark, will you be now in the business operation and things that she's overseeing?
Okay, let me, I'm going to take that. So that ought to give you a clue right there. Okay? I got this. I was getting ready to share with Mark this morning. I said I laid out a 2-pager this weekend that really shows our vision, values, kind of our 3 top priorities, and there's a lot underneath those priorities, and then kind of the whole March Madness piece. I said, I want you to see what the plan is and where we're headed. He said, I don't want to see it. I know when you left my office last week that I picked the right person. This is yours. I said, that's exactly what I wanted to hear because that was a test.
Hey, Mark, obviously a ton of questions remain out there. I guess first and foremost, we're all wondering what in 1998 or in 2000 when you bought the team, what did you know, if anything, about that 98 investigation?
All that will come out from the investigator's report, so I'll defer to that, and we'll discuss. Sen will decide what to do at that point.
And no insight that you can lend about what was known and when?
That's why we have investigators.
I won't let him talk. Be quiet. Hush.
Mark, can you run the basketball side too, by the way?
Mark over here. How did you come to Sen? How did this? Obviously, this came about very, very quickly, but I'm sure you had to do your own due diligence. How did you?
Yes, yeah. Leadership at AT&T suggested her name to us and basically conveyed to us that their most devastating day at AT&T was when Sen left, and that and confirmation from untold number of people was all I needed to hear.
Hey, Mark, just to follow up on earlier, talking about the importance of transparency, and I understand you're going to wait for the investigation, but all of your fans want to know how you couldn't know more about your business side with you being such an adept businessman. And I think that question needs to be asked again and again until we get an answer. And I don't want to have to answer it again and again. So if you have some sort of answer for that, that would be great.
Not at this point.
Is there any way I can ask that question to have the proper response? Because there are millions of people who follow this team and they want to know from you, Mark.
It'll come out.
So you are vowing that we will find out all that you knew?
At some point.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can you tell us more about this phone call? Because obviously that's what swayed you. Was it late at night? Was it, what were you doing when you got this call? Was it shocking to get the call?
They probably won't let me tell. I can't tell that whole story. What I actually had on some sweats of another basketball team, but I've gotten rid of those now. I've gotten rid of those. Mark called and in fact I missed his first call and I missed his text message because I was on another call, and then he said, you know, he was Mark Cuban, and I said, okay, who is that? I didn't know him, which was great. I just did not know him. My kids know him. They know Shark Tank. They think he is just, when I told them I had talked to him, they're like, Mom, you missed Mark Cuban's call? I'm like, who is that? So when I finally got a chance to see him, I said, I can't come right now because I have a doctor's appointment. He said, I will see you anytime you can come. And I said, I think I can be in your office by 4 o'clock. And I walked in the office at 4 o'clock, and I'm telling you, our receptionist was there, smiling. It's like they were just waiting for me. And truly, it was just, they said, a calming spirit that just came over them. And I went and sat in his office, and we talked face to face.
After a hug.
After a big hug. I gave a big hug. We talked face to face for 52 minutes. And I know that because, you know, I'm glued to my phone all the time. So when I walked out, I'm like, okay, what time is it? 4:52. And it was a wonderful conversation. And what impressed me, what really made me say yes, of course, I always talk about being MAD, M-A-D, making a difference. I said, this is my opportunity to actually be a part of the solution with a lot of other people who are trying to help with this issue. But when more stories came out, and they matched exactly some of the things that Mark told me, he was so transparent and so honest. And I can't go into all the details of the conversation, but I knew I was dealing with a person of integrity. And I told him, I said, I have to think about this. I have a brand. I worked very hard for the brand that I have. And I can't attach my brand to something I can't trust, and something that is not reliable, and something that's, I don't mind flawed, because I think we're all flawed to some degree. We all have had things to work through. But if it lacks integrity, I can't attach my brand to it. And by the time I left his office, spent a day with the folks, I said, I absolutely will attach my brand to this organization. This is a wonderful organization, wonderful people in the organization. Some bad things have happened, and I told the team today, I know a lot of this is in the past, and let me make it clear, if it's in the present, it won't stay, because my brand is attached to it now. One last question? One last question.
One for Mark and 1%. Mark, can you tell us what has this week for you personally been like, the last week? And Sent, can you tell me your thoughts having read that Sports Illustrated article that was written about the team and the culture?
Well, I'll go first. I was disgusted. And that's why I went, and I did a little bit of research on my way, obviously, because I told my husband, I need you to drive because I've got to do a little research right now. And I actually didn't know what I was going to be walking into. I mean, honestly, I just didn't know. You know, you read these stories and you start to get a picture. And honestly, I didn't know what was going to happen when that door opened. And what I found was just the opposite of what I thought I was going to find. But I was disgusted with what the allegations of what has happened in the past and all that. There's just no place for this. No place at all. And we have zero tolerance for it.
Anything else?
Yeah, today's not the time for me to talk about anything. I'll just defer to Sent. This is about us moving forward, and the investigators have talked to me. They'll talk to everybody, and we'll get a report from them on everything.
Thank you so much.
Take one more for Eddie. Sorry.
Certainly.
Sorry, last one.
I'm just
I
curious.
like Eddie.
I'm just curious about. You mentioned you'll obviously interview all the employees. How can you be confident that the former employees are actually going to want to talk to you?
We don't know that. We hope they will. We don't know.
Recourse. I mean, if they don't, they don't.
They don't. Right. We hope they will. I hope they will. I really want to see us.
All right, guys. So again, this press conference was a little bit earlier. A lot of you guys know Mark Cuban from TV and entertainment, and then of course sports, as he is the owner here of the Mavericks. Not speaking a lot in this press conference, kind of leaving it to the new CEO there, but she did a great job of answering some of the questions. But again, you know, this organization under fire, as nothing really is safe from sexual assault allegations. We've seen it pervade a lot of realms of our lives, including sports. And to deal with it, Cuban is saying, we're going to, I'm going to stay here as owner, switching out the CEO, making some changes in the front of the house here at the organization, and hoping to sort of squelch, I guess, some of the stuff that's out there and put them in a whole new light for the public to see. So a little bit of sports news, kind of also related to sexual assault, which we've seen so much in the news lately. Meanwhile, still, crowds, there they are streaming into the Billy Graham Library, where Billy Graham's casket is laying currently. We saw earlier Bill Clinton make a little statement outside there, and you could see how they totally cleared a way for him and a couple Secret Service agents, and all the public were not allowed in during that time. But now we can see this picture here, just tons of people there in line. This is continuing on there at the Billy Graham Library in Charlotte, North Carolina, where the public is invited to go pay their respects. I'm sure it's quite a line to get in there. We've seen it for days now, and it will likely be similarly when he is transported up here to D.C. to the Capitol Rotunda to lay there in honor. So this is just a live look at what's going on down there. After former President Clinton spoke, I think they let sort of the ropes opened up, and they let some of the public come back over to view the casket there. We're just getting word in that Vice President Pence's plane, I believe, has touched down in Nashville. He's in Nashville to make a pro-life speech at one of the centers there, so we're going to kind of follow that. If we do have video of that, we'll bring that to you. And for now, let's take this split screen. You can see outside the library there, just what it looks like live. Another story that this was quite interesting. I don't know if anybody heard about this. Check out this picture. Totally switching gears here. This is a Chicago candidate for Congress, so a congressional candidate in Chicago, local politics there. He is supporting legalizing marijuana, and in his ad, he's sitting there in a chair in front of that American flag, smoking a joint in this new campaign ad. His name is Benjamin Thomas Wolf. This article is making the rounds. This picture is making the rounds because this is his campaign platform. It's his progressive platform, and this is a picture that he's using in his campaign to talk about legalizing recreational marijuana. And so in this ad, he puffs the joint in front of the flag. Kind of the first time you've seen something like that, right? I thought this was kind of unique to show. He told the Sun-Times, the Chicago Sun-Times, that he thinks users of cannabis should be more upfront and talk about it. And so he's doing that in his platform. He's showing that right there in his ad. Pretty interesting, right? Thought that was kind of cool. Another cool social story, just talking about what's popping in social news. How about this? Similarly, in the same vein of, I guess you could say, let's talk about Johnny Walker. Johnny Walker Black. Here it is, a new look for Johnny Walker Black. This is a special edition called Jane Walker. Guys, they're introducing this new label, black label, with a woman as the ad there. She's outlined in black with a top hat. They're calling it Jane Walker because, well, the man has been on logos for a long time, years and years, and they're changing it up. They're introducing this. So more than 200 years, the Scottish logo has had that striding man on it. But these limited edition bottles are going to have this top-hatted woman. They're going to sell for $34 coming up this month, and they're going to be used to reach and empower women in this sort of day and age of seeing all these women empowerment movements. This is coming perfectly in time with Women's Month and International Women's Month coming up in March. And this is the bottle that you'll get to see out there. You can see it even says Jane Walker on it, and it's etched on the bottle, not just on that cardboard casing. And some of the money, the donations that are going, are going to the company for $1 for every bottle sold. Those donations are going to support Monumental Women, which is a campaign that is going to end up constructing some monuments to honor suffragettes in New York City Central Park. Notably, the park currently has 23 statues, but none of which honor women. So lots of sort of companies getting on board with this. Proceeds are being donated to an organization that inspire women to run for political office. So a lot of things kind of surrounding this new look here. Let us know what you think. Anybody an avid drinker of Johnny Walker? Anybody care that this is going to be a new bottle label? Thought it was kind of interesting. I think it's very pro-women. Like I said, it's timely for what we've been talking about in the news. All right, guys. Meanwhile, we're back in the newsroom here at Fox 5 DC in Washington. If you have any questions or comments, leave it on the live chat. Let us know. We're going to kind of jump around to different video feeds. Like I said, I think we're going to get that coming in from the Vice President in just a moment. I'm looking for what is up next. Later on in the afternoon, there is going to be a White House press briefing at around 2 o'clock Eastern is what we're hearing. Also, interestingly, now we're going to probably take this live to our Facebook page, but at around 4 o'clock Eastern time, so later in the afternoon, we'll be taking down this YouTube stream. But if you join us on our Facebook page, President Trump is going to be historically making an announcement for historical black colleges. He's going to be talking about leadership in the White House surrounding the initiative on historically black colleges and universities from the Oval Office. So that'll be kind of interesting. All right, we're just getting a little note that there is a NASA launch going on today, and there's a pre-launch presser going on in a moment here from Cape Canaveral, Florida. So we're going to jump over there to see what they have to say before this launch. All right, let's check in there, and then we'll bring you the Vice President in Nashville as well. So a lot of stuff coming in right now. Stay on with us for live stuff from all over the nation, guys. We're going to try to keep you up to date with what is breaking from our newsroom. All right, let's go down to Cape Canaveral.
Tim Walsh, NOAA's GOES-R Acting System Program Director. Sandra Smalley, Director of the Joint Agency Satellite Division at NASA Headquarters. Tim Dunn, NASA Launch Director. Scott Messer, United Launch Alliance Program Manager for NASA Missions. And Kathy Winters, Launch Weather Officer for the Cape Canaveral Air Force Station, 45th Weather Squadron. Thank you all for joining us. We'll begin with opening comments from our presenters, and then we'll be happy to take your questions. For those of you following on social media, you may ask questions using the hashtag AskGoes on Twitter. For now, we'll begin with Steve Bowles from NOAA. Steve?
Thank you, Tori. It's a real treat to be here again for a GOES-S launch, having been here just 15 months ago for GOES-R. In just 2 days, GOES-S, the second in NOAA's Next Generation Geostationary Operational Environmental Satellite R series, will lift off from Cape Canaveral, Florida, and GOES-S will join GOES-16, which is how we renamed GOES-R once it launched, which was launched last November, November 16, as I mentioned, and NOAA 20, which just last November in 2017, NOAA launched to completing NOAA's new next-generation operational geostationary and polar orbiting satellite fleet. It's been a very busy 18 months or so for NOAA. Go to the first video, please. When GOES-16, when it reaches orbit, GOES-16 will be known as GOES-S will be known as GOES-17. It will become the GOES-West operational satellite in late 2018, operating opposite of GOES-16, which is in the GOES-East position. In the GOES-West position, GOES-17 will provide coverage from for all the Western United States, Alaska, Hawaii, virtually the entire Pacific Ocean, Mexico, and Central America. A combination of GOES-S in the West and GOES-East gives you almost a hemispherical coverage of the Americas from West Africa to East Asia and all of the space in between. Like GOES-16, GOES-S is a NOAA mission developed in partnership with NASA. NASA has led the development of the satellite and will provide continued and will provide the launch services. NOAA will command and control the satellite and has responsibility for all the scientific applications of the data and distribute the data to our primary user, the National Weather Service, and for users around the nation and in the entire Western Hemisphere. With the launch of GOES-S, NOAA's fleet of next-generation geostationary satellites, and coupled with the use of our Japanese partners' advanced Himawari satellite, we were able to cover more than half of the planet with the most sophisticated weather forecast technology and observations ever flown from space, and geostationary in particular. For many decades, NOAA satellites have been the backbone of our weather and climate forecasts, but as we've already seen from GOES-16, the GOES-R series is really a quantum leap above any of its NOAA predecessors. If we can go to the next slide, please. You see here a close-up of, this is back, I'm sorry. This slide shows you the GOES-East and GOES-West operating in tandem. If you go to the next slide, please, you'll see the close-up of Hurricane Irma as revealed by GOES-16. Looking at the eye of Hurricane Irma, which you'll get to hopefully in a moment, from the Advanced Baseline Imager, which was the primary instrument on GOES-16, as it transits across from the Eastern Caribbean across north of Puerto Rico. The ABI, or the Advanced Baseline Imager on GOES-16, will also be the same flying on GOES-S and for the rest of the satellites in the GOES-R series. GOES-16, even beyond the spectacular imagery we've had, is already proving to be a game changer with much more refined, higher quality data for faster, more accurate weather forecasts, warnings, and alerts.
Just a note here, guys, from the newsroom, you're watching this pre-launch press conference from NASA right there on your right side. They are launching ISS Expedition 54 later on this afternoon. They're explaining it a little bit in detail here prior to that. And then right below my face here on your left side, that's Vice President Pence landing in Nashville, Tennessee. He's speaking to a national convention of Christian communicators and a small group of pro-life supporters today at this luncheon. He's been outspoken, of course, about his Christianity. He's visiting Nashville for the second time since he was elected to office as vice president. And he will be speaking, like I said, to this Evangelical Association later on this afternoon. We may or may not have that live either here on the stream or on another social media platform from Fox 5 DC. But you can see landing on the tarmac there, coming out of the airplane, Secret Service surrounding him, lots of media. And we'll see how long we have this video feed of the vice president, who, of course, emphasizes his Christian faith in public service often and we'll be speaking to that end today at this luncheon. So that's coming up later. We'll check back into this pre-launch conference.
We rely on our partner missions to provide more data for us and to meet our goals as well. In the more than 10 years of hard work that went into the development of the GOES-R series and sacrifice from the GOES-R program community, which includes, in addition to NOAA and NASA, our primary contractor support crew, Lockheed Martin and the Harris Corporation, who are responsible for spacecraft, the Major II instruments, and the ground system, as well as several other companies who have provided the space weather and solar physics measurements as well. These investments over time by people and by funds have been a great dividends to the American people. We look forward very soon to have these three brilliant eyes in the sky with GOES 17 added to GOES 16 and NOAA 20 flying now for NOAA and for the nation. Thank you, Tori.
Thank you, Steve. Next, we have Tim Walsh from the GOES-R System Program.
Thank you, Tori. So we just heard Steve talk about the GOES-S as the second in a new series of game-changing geostationary weather satellites. Its coverage will include North America, Central America, and all the way to New Zealand in the Pacific. GOES-S, which will be known as GOES 17 once it achieves geostationary orbit, will provide high-resolution imagery of Alaska and surrounding high-latitude areas previously unavailable or unusable from NOAA's geostationary constellation. When it launches on March 1st and becomes operational later this year, GOES-S will help us see the West in true high definition, and along with the remaining satellites of this series, will extend the life of NOAA's geostationary weather constellation to 2036. Can we bring up the first visual, please? This first visual shows a full disk comparison between the previous GOES satellite on your right and the current GOES satellite, GOES 16, which is in GOES East on your left. You can see just the cadence that we use for full disk imagery is significantly increased, and we also have significant more spectral and spatial content. This mission underscores NOAA's commitment to flying the best possible geostationary satellites to support and improve the ability of the National Weather Service to forecast weather as accurately as possible, particularly looking at life-threatening conditions that we can all face. Like GOES 16, GOES-S and the remaining satellites in the series, GOES T and U, also will fly 6 new sophisticated instruments. The Advanced Baseline Imager, the ABI, which you just saw some imagery from, is taking some of the most vivid images of weather, climate, and oceans in the Western Hemisphere that we've ever seen. The ABI has 16 spectral bands compared to just 5 on our previous GOES satellites. ABI provides 3 times more spectral information with 4 times the resolution and 5 times the scanning rate of our previous GOES imagers. These satellites are giving us the ability to look at some storms as often as every 30 seconds, allowing forecasters to see storms as they're developing instead of as they've already taken place. Could we bring up the second visual? GOES 16 one-minute imagery is shown of some tornado-producing supercells in southwest Iowa on June 28, 2017. ABI Band 2 is one of our visible bands used for the detection of severe weather. With the better resolution of this band on ABI, which just happens to be our best resolution of all of our ABI bands at 0.5 kilometer, paired with the more frequent one-minute imagery, it's easier for forecasters to characterize convective clouds from agitated or towering cumulus to mature overshooting tops, which can indicate storm intensification. Then there's the Geostationary Lightning Mapper, or GLM, which on GOES 16 became the first ever operational lightning mapper flown in geostationary orbit. GLM is giving us an accurate picture of total lightning activity, not just cloud to ground, but also cloud to cloud, continually both day and night across the Western Hemisphere. Intensifying severe storms often exhibit a significant increase in total lightning activity, particularly in cloud lightning. Among other applications, this data can help us with air travel safety, helping to inform decisions to route planes around severe weather. Could we please bring up the next visual, please? This time-lapse movie of GOES 16 lightning data covers the afternoon and evening of November 5th, 2017, when a large complex of thunderstorms spanned across Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. This video is overlaid with aircraft flight tracks, if you look carefully, that show how air traffic interacts with the convective weather, with flights routed around the system or through gaps within the system to reach their destination. The GOES-S satellite also has 4 sophisticated instruments that closely monitor solar activity, and has the potential for space weather to impact systems around the Earth, including GPS, radio communication systems, and even harm critical infrastructure such as power grids. The Solar Ultraviolet Imager, or SUVI, observes and characterizes complex active regions on the sun, including solar flares, which may give rise to coronal mass ejections. Let's please bring up our next visual. GOES 16 SUVI captured this imagery of a powerful solar flare last September 10th, 2017. You can see the flare's onset in the upper right-hand corner, the upper right quadrant, followed by a huge shock wave produced by the flare that you can see rippling across the sun. Pretty tremendous imagery. These new satellites are generating for us 34 new products that are boosting NOAA's ability to accurately forecast weather on the Earth and in space. You've seen some hurricane products and some of the other products. There are also many others. For example, the volcanic gas product has been developed. A volcanic gas product has been developed to identify areas where volcanic gas is present and potentially hazardous. It will ultimately help volcanic gas advisory centers issue more accurate aviation, air quality, and public health warnings. Beyond weather forecasting, GOES-S will be a part of the international satellite-based search and rescue network called SARSAT, which helps save lives with a special transponder on the satellite that can detect extremely faint distress beacons on the Earth. Ground support for these powerful satellites is a major part of our story. The ground system, with two primary locations in Suitland, Maryland and Wallops Island, Virginia, operates the satellites, receives the data, and brings the data down to the ground and produces the products and distributes the information in real time. A third facility in Fairmont, West Virginia is our backup in case a systems or communications failure with either of our primary sites. Once launched, GOES-S will undergo approximately 6 months of testing and validation and will be operational in late 2018 as the new GOES-West satellite. GOES 16 and 17 will then work together to provide fast, high-resolution imagery and data in the majority of the Western Hemisphere, ranging from West Africa all the way to New Zealand, as I said before. Bringing GOES 16 and GOES-S from development to launch has been an incredibly rewarding journey for our team, a true team effort. I want to echo Steve's kudos to the entire GOES-R program team for their stellar contributions to get us to this day. Thank you. Tori?
Thank you. Now we'll go to Sandra Smalley with the Joint Agency Satellite Division.
Good afternoon. I'm thrilled to be here today to talk to you about the GOES-R series program. It's a very exciting and very important mission, as you've heard from my fellow panelist, continuing to transform weather forecasting. The launch of GOES-S spacecraft continues over 40 years of partnership between NOAA and NASA, collaborating on geostationary operational environmental satellites. The Joint Agency Satellite Division within NASA Science Mission Directorate plays a unique role. We bring to bear NASA's expertise in flight and ground system development, program and project management to support space flight development on the GOES system. The partnership began when NASA launched the first operational GOES satellite, GOES-1, on October 16, 1975. And now, 42 years later, GOES will launch on March 1st. Aside from possibly launch and first light, the video that you're about to see is one of the most exciting times for a satellite. It's actually when the satellite arrives here at Kennedy Space Center and we're getting ready to launch. Please cue the video. So here you see the GOES satellite aboard an Air Force C-5 aircraft, which landed at Kennedy Space Center's shuttle landing facility on December 4th, 2017, after taking off from Buckley Air Force Base. The GOES-S satellite was moved to the Astrotech processing facility via semi-truck that was it was originally loaded at the Lockheed Martin Waterton facility. Upon arrival at Astrotech, the satellite was removed from its environmentally controlled shipping container and readied for launch. After final test and pre-launch preparations, the GOES-S satellite was integrated atop the ULO payload adapter. That's what you see happening right there. And then finally, it's encapsulated in its Atlas V fairing, as you see here. And now, GOES-S is ready for launch. So, a lot of work has gone into getting GOES-R ready for orbit. I would like to recognize the extraordinary team members that brought this mission together, beginning with Lockheed Martin for developing the spacecraft and two instruments, the GLM and SUVI. Harris Corporation for developing the ABI and ground system. University of Colorado Laboratory for Atmospheres and Space Physics for developing EXIS. Assurance Technology Corporation for developing SICE. McIntyre Electronic Design Associates for developing the magnetometer. The Kennedy Space Center's Launch Services Program for acquiring the Atlas V launch vehicle. United Launch Alliance for providing the Atlas V 541 launch vehicle. and NASA Goddard Space Flight Center for providing the program and project management and engineering expertise to the GOES-R series program. Thank you all for your team's hard work and dedication to delivering this amazing next-generation geostationary satellite. It will continue to provide weather forecasters with the information they need to protect the public and the nation. So I want to say, go Atlas, go Centaur, goes S.
Thank you, Sandra. Next, we have Tim Dunn, NASA Launch Director.
Thank you, Tori. I'm proud to be here today representing the women and men of NASA's Launch Services Program, and I'm very excited to be the launch director for the GOES-S mission. Working alongside our United Launch Alliance colleagues, the engineers and analysts of NASA LSP take great pride in launching this next-generation weather satellite. As a Floridian, I want to give my personal thanks to my three colleagues to my right for this new hurricane tracking and data capability that this generation of GOES spacecraft brings us. NASA has a terrific record flying on the Atlas V. We've successfully launched 15 missions on this magnificent rocket. Missions to Pluto, Jupiter, the Moon, the Sun, the radiation belts, 3 spacecraft to Mars, the asteroid Bennu, as well as GOES-S's predecessor GOES-R and 3 TDRS spacecraft. GOES-S will be NASA's 16th mission on an Atlas V and the 76th Atlas V launch overall. GOES-S will launch on an Atlas V 541 configuration. The 4 means 4 solid rocket boosters added, so it's going to be a big one. We'll launch from Space Launch Complex 41. Complex 41 has hosted 61 Atlas V launches to date. Now I'd like to show a video with some great shots of the ULA crew receiving and assembling the Atlas V launch vehicle and mating GOES-S. Please roll the video. Here you see the arrival at the Cape in January of the Atlas V first stage booster and second stage Centaur. These stages are manufactured at ULA's factory in Decatur, Alabama, and transported to the Cape via the Mariner ship. Here you see the offload and transport across the Cape into pre-launch processing facilities. That's a great shot of the second stage Centaur there at its off-site vehicle processing facility. Here we are early on the morning of January 31st. This is the first stage booster being rolled out to the vertical integration facility at Complex 41, and that was a great drone shot of the erection of the first stage booster. This is one of 4 solid rocket boosters that were put up after booster erection, and that is the second stage stack coming out to be mated. And those are also some great drone shots, new capability that we have to document the processing. Here is the encapsulated GOES-S spacecraft rolling out early on the morning of the 16th of February out to Complex 41's vertical integration facility for erection and mate to the top of the Atlas V Centaur. The GOES-S launch campaign has been very exciting. Over the last 11 days since that spacecraft mate you just saw, the Atlas V team has been busy with launch preps. Last week, we performed the integrated systems test between the spacecraft and the rocket, and that was very successful. Also, the combined NASA and ULA launch team held our flight readiness review last Friday, where we assessed all processing and pre-launch preps for the mission. That went well. Then after FRR on Friday afternoon, we performed the mission dress rehearsal, where we exercised and prepared the entire ULA, NASA, NOAA, Lockheed Martin, and Air Force Atlas V launch team. Just this morning, we conducted the launch readiness review for GOES-S. Senior managers from KSC, Goddard Space Flight Center, NOAA, and headquarters, as well as our ULA and Air Force partners, assessed the readiness for launch. Tomorrow, we will begin our final launch preps at 10 a.m. Eastern Time by rolling the Atlas V on its mobile launch platform approximately 1/4 mile from the VIF to the launch pad at Complex 41. Then the launch team will load approximately 26,000 gallons of RP-1 fuel onto the first stage. On Thursday, the launch crew will begin arriving on console in the morning to begin the power-on sequence for both the GOES spacecraft and the Atlas rocket. The crew will perform final preps of Atlas V power-on and electrical checks followed Thursday afternoon by loading super cold cryogenic propellants on board the Atlas V. Liquid oxygen into the oxidizer tanks of the first and second stages, and then liquid hydrogen into the fuel tank of the second stage Centaur. Final flight control tests will be performed along with final tests with Eastern Range instrumentation, and then we'll be ready for launch Thursday afternoon at 5:02 p.m. Eastern Time with a 2-hour launch window. To summarize, the spacecraft, the Atlas V rocket, and range equipment are all ready, and the combined government and contractor launch team is prepared to launch GOES-S, a critical national asset for weather data. Back to you, Tori.
Thank you, Tim. Next is Scott Messer from United Launch Alliance.
Thank you, Tori. So on behalf of the men and women of United Launch Alliance, just want to say how excited we are to be here today as we prepare to launch this critical NASA NOAA payload GOES-S. GOES-S will be the third launch for ULA in 2018 and the 126th successful launch overall since the company was formed in 2006. Standing proud out on the launch platform, the vehicle, the Atlas 541, as Tim mentioned, stands 197 feet tall, has a 5-meter fairing, and 4 solid rocket boosters. This configuration was first launched in November of 2011 and has had 5 launches to date, with GOES-S being the 6th. We've launched, I think, 3 DoD satellites, the previous GOES-R, and of course the Mars Curiosity rover were all launched on this particular configuration. Weighing in at just a little over 1 million pounds and putting off about 2.25 million pounds of thrust, the vehicle will lift off on the 1st. And we have a little video that we like to show that shows kind of the sequence of events that will occur after liftoff. So if we could roll that video.
The following profile details the important events of this mission using approximate times.
4, 3, 2, 1. And liftoff.
The Atlas V RD-180 main engine and 4 solid rocket boosters ignite to generate the 2.25 million pounds of thrust to lift the rocket away from the pad. Shortly after liftoff, Atlas begins its initial pitch, yaw, and roll maneuvers to attain the proper ascent profile and minimize aerodynamic loads. The Atlas V reaches Mach 1, the speed of sound, at 35 seconds. At 47 seconds, the vehicle experiences maximum dynamic pressure. All 4 solid rocket boosters, or SRBs, are jettisoned at 1 minute 50 seconds. 1 minute 40 seconds later, the payload fairing is jettisoned. Approaching booster engine cutoff, the Atlas V burns propellant at a rate of 1,856 pounds per second, traveling at over 13,340 miles per hour, and is located 83 miles in altitude and 267 miles downrange. Booster engine cutoff occurs 4 minutes 22 seconds after liftoff. 6 seconds later, the booster stage is jettisoned. The vehicle now weighs a little more than 5% of what it did at liftoff 4.5 minutes earlier. 10 seconds after booster separation, the first Centaur main engine start takes place. Cutoff of the Centaur main engine occurs just over 12 minutes after launch. The mission now enters a nearly 10.5-minute coast phase. At 22 minutes 38 seconds, the Centaur main engine is restarted. This burn will last 5.5 minutes. Following the second Centaur main engine start, at 28 minutes 9 seconds, the mission now enters a 3-hour coast phase. Just over 3 hours 28 minutes after liftoff, the Centaur is started for a third and final burn. Approximately a minute and a half later, final cutoff of the Centaur main engine occurs. At 3 hours 32 minutes and 31 seconds, Centaur releases the GOES-S satellite for NOAA and NASA.
Great. I don't know about you, but I get excited for Thursday's launch just watching that. That was the GOES R footage that you saw initially there.
So again, guys, you are watching this pre-launch conference. I was mistaken earlier. The launch is not today, but it's this Thursday. So in a couple days, they're giving sort of the rundown of what it's all about, what's it going to look like. And I know this science news is pretty interesting because if judging from the popularity of that SpaceX Falcon Heavy stream that we did, which was so interesting, people loved watching that. It was really cool to see sort of that side of it, Elon Musk's all that technology and all that interest. And then this is some NASA stuff coming out. And I know people like this. So just wanted to show you some of that. Now, right below my face here on the left side, that's a look. You can see they're getting ready there at the podium inside the Gaylord Opryland Resort. That's in Nashville, Tennessee, where Vice President Pence is going to be making remarks to the 75th annual gathering of the National Religious Broadcasters. It's their annual meeting. Apparently, actor Dennis Quaid and I think Stephen Baldwin and some other notable Republican forces in Hollywood will actually be speaking at this conference. It's a 4-day thing in Nashville. There are expected to be about 4,000 people attending, and the Vice President will be making some remarks on his pro-life status and agenda and sort of topics to that effect. That's there down right below my face here on the left side of your screen. So that should be coming up shortly if we have that live, which I believe we will. There's a live shot there. We'll bring that up for you, but for now, split screen for you, finishing out this pre-launch press conference with NASA, and then we'll take it to some other stories as we round out this last half hour here with some other news stories. If anything does break, we'll bring that to you as well, live from our newsroom. Thanks for watching.
Especially last year, it was very important during hurricane season, and we're really excited about this launch as well. Weather does look great for launch, also for the rollout tomorrow. So we're going to roll out in good weather. There's a front that's actually moving through today, but it's not active at all. As you can see outside, it's sunny, partly cloudy conditions. There's just slight chances of isolated showers once in a while during the day. Today, also tomorrow, that boundary is going to actually move back to the north. But again, there's no upper level energy with it, so it's not really making any weather in the area. And so tomorrow, winds are only going to be gusting about 12 knots for the roll. Really good weather. As we go into Thursday for launch, we do have a little bit windier conditions, but nothing that's going to violate our launch constraints. So again, favorable weather, and if we happen to move even another day, weather remains favorable. Even with the front moving through Friday morning, it's again doesn't have a lot of energy or activity with it. So overall, a very nice chance for good weather for the next several days. Let's go ahead and look at the satellites so you can see what I'm talking about. You can see that there is a front that's pushed through Florida, and it's not making any weather really. We just had maybe a slight chance for a shower here and there, but really overall great weather. Just slightly breezy today with winds gusting in the upper teens, and that's going to come down tomorrow as that boundary moves back up, but with no fanfare at all. So going into our weather be good for the roll, and then going into our launch day forecast, which you'll see on the next slide here. And we're just looking at scattered skies, unrestricted visibility. There's a little bit of wind out there, but it's not an issue for launch. Winds gusting to 26 knots from the west-southwest. The temperature's going to be cooler as we get this windy, a little bit windier conditions and getting into the evening hours. We're getting up to the 80s during the day, but by launch time, 77 degrees. And the only concerns, and they're just slight, is cumulus clouds and ground winds, and there's just a 20% chance of violating any of our weather launch commit criteria. If we happen to delay another day, weather still looks great. The winds actually come down, so the only concern this day would be just a 20% chance of violating constraints due to cumulus clouds. But again, overall, very favorable weather. And again, thank you for the GOES-S satellite.
Thank you, Kathy. At this time, we'll take questions from the audience. Again, if you're following us on social media, you may ask questions using the hashtag AskGoes on Twitter. We also have a phone bridge for the media who wish to call in. So for those of you in the room, please raise your hand and wait for the microphone. Please state your name and affiliation and to whom you're directing your question. And we'll go ahead and take a question on the front row with Bill.
Hi, Bill Horowitz, CBS News. For Tim, I guess, just on launch dates, do you have Thursday and Friday on the range? And can you tell us, we were a little concerned that perhaps Falcon 9 they were talking about launching that one early Thursday, like 17 hours before you guys. I didn't think you could roll out if they were doing that for, possible plume contamination or whatever. Can you just talk about the strategy of how y'all schedule launches like that, and if you have both days in a row? Thanks.
Yes, sure. So we are confirmed on the range for both March 1st and March 2nd. So that's the typical range reservation. And we were aware of SpaceX due to their fact that they didn't launch. They had requested March 1st, early morning March 1st. We understand that that has not been approved by the range, so we're clear for our opportunity on the 1st. We were doing initial assessments of being in an exposed condition. Obviously, we'd need some time to take a look at that to assess all the risks that it would be incurred on GOES-S as well as the Atlas V rocket. So we're not in that condition right now, and we look forward to launch on Thursday afternoon.
Next, we'll take a question from Marcia Dunn.
Marcia Dunn, Associated Press for Mr. Voles. Could you explain in general terms how much of a boon, a bonus, how lucky everyone was as Hurricane Irma and Harvey came, through the United States last summer, and how helpful, how much did 16 offer that would not have been there had it not been up and working?
Time you have. It was really remarkable. The services that the legacy GOES satellites have been providing were there, were ready and prepared to do all the operational services, and the National Weather Service and all of our other responders were ready to work with those information sets. GOES 16 was in a checkout mode still until the end of last year, so it was just in its test and development phase. But the impact of the imagery, the resolution, the high spectral content, the information content, we're seeing in snippets and sort of all over the place during the multiple storms. I'll give a couple of simple examples. Certainly when Hurricane Harvey landed in Houston, we were able to, with the high resolution and the high repeat refresh rate on GOES 16, able to indicate the position and the tracking of the eye wall and the severe storms on a mile-by-mile basis and minute-by-minute time frame, so that we can be in close coordination with the emergency managers, the first responders, to actually give them almost tactical information on where the eye was so they can move in response to that and plan around that in a way that we would not have been able to do previously. In Puerto Rico, when Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico and effectively took out the entire power grid, that was noticeable. But what was also it took out our weather radar that was on the island as well. So they had no ground-based radar of consequence to cover while the main storm is still flowing through there and while the significant impacts are still being felt. But the accuracy and the precision of the GOES 16 data set coming down in near real time and being transmitted to the responders and the forecasters in the region, we're able to use as a proxy some of the GOES 16 radar data, not radar, but the GOES 16 imagery and products to understand wind speeds and where the storms were occurring and where the significant events were happening.
Switching this up just a little bit to bring you a scene out of New York. This is in Brooklyn, New York. The crews are working to free a man who's apparently trapped under some of the rubble of this construction or something of this building. We don't have a lot of details here, but you can see there's a lot of FDNY firefighters there and medics on hand, and you can't quite even tell exactly where they're efforting this rescue. Someone in the middle of your screen, I believe. But again, this is in Brooklyn, New York, a construction site. People normally going about their job, and they are apparently working to get someone who is trapped. It's hard to kind of tell where the sense of urgency is in this exact sort of aerial view here, but this is courtesy of WABC getting some aerials in for our stream again in New York, and we're taking this from our sister station up there in New York, Fox 5 New York. Crews working to get this guy out of there. From what I can tell on the right side of the screen, it seems like people are not frantically running about. Hopefully this isn't too much of a serious incident, but of course anytime that someone is trapped, this is serious and they do need to attend to it. So you can see just lots of people there working hard. Towards the middle of your screen, I believe that guy with the hard hat with the red stretcher, whatever that is, it seems to be sort of at the epicenter of what's going on here. But we're going to keep this on your screen here as we bring it along with our NASA feed. Now we're continuing to monitor the scene in Nashville to see when the Vice President will be coming up to speak, and we'll be bringing that up shortly when it does. So that's coming up next. Prayers, of course, going out to this worker who is trapped at this Brooklyn construction site that you see full screen right here. So let's keep that on your screen I see that they are setting up the podium there for the Vice President in Nashville. So again, that should be coming up shortly. I think his speech was just delivered. So let's bring this to your left screen, and we'll continue on with this NASA Q&A event at the Kennedy Space Center in Cape Canaveral.
There's space weather constraints, and so we're going to be monitoring that with the space weather sensors and also the lightning mapper. You know, it's hard to get lightning data offshore over the water. So now we have our in-cloud system that does it locally, but sometimes you can get an AMVO cloud that's streaming all the way in from the Gulf of Mexico, and we can actually now see lightning if it's in that location that we couldn't see before. So there's a lot of uses, not just for all the meteorologists out there, but even for our specific launch forecasting. And one final thing I'd like to mention, I was out in California lately, back in December, when those wildfires broke out, and goes west, and now the new goes 17 will provide much better resolution for the wildfires, so which will hopefully save lives. People are evacuating their homes, and now you can actually detect it earlier and detect the growth of the storm better, or the wildfire better. So there's a lot of really good public safety uses for this, as well as for launch forecasting.
Next, we'll take a question from social media.
This question comes in from Antonio on Twitter, and I think probably for Dr. Voles or Mr. Walsh. When will GOES-S send back its first images? When will we see the first images from GOES-S?
Okay, after we launch, it takes about 2 weeks to get to on orbit, to the geostationary orbit, and then we spend about a month outgassing our instruments, letting basically effluents go off the instruments, and then eventually we start turning them on. So it'll be a couple months afterwards, roughly in May, when we start seeing our first data from the instruments, and then as I mentioned earlier, we'll spend about 6 months evaluating that data, perfecting the products, validating the products, and getting ready with the National Weather Service to release that data into operations.
Thank you. At this time, 2 of our participants will need to step out to go to another GOES-S related meeting. So we'll go ahead and excuse them if they're ready.
I can do one more follow-up to the question about impact of GOES 17.
Please go ahead.
One of the things, we focus on what you can see with the satellite. You see the storms, you see the hurricanes, et cetera. But one of the benefits of being able to look at a large storm like Harvey, which went all the way from northern Mexico to the Tennessee and Kentucky, was to be able to use that large synoptic view and to understand where there aren't issues that you have to deal with as well. So if you're FEMA and you need to deploy resources to prepare for floods or emergency of water or emergency supplies, it's just as important to know where the floods occur as where they're not occurring. So what GOES 16 is able to do with its precision and its accuracy, and combined with our polar satellites, which provide flood mapping and flood forecasting, like the VIIRS instrument that's on the JPSS and the SUMI NPP series, allowed NOAA to provide that information to FEMA, say these are areas where there is likely to be flooding, these are areas where there's not, so that they don't have to worry about eastern Tennessee, because that's a area which to earlier models might have been susceptible to flooding, but it's not happening this time, so they can focus their energy where it really is needed. And that discrimination between the problem and non-problem areas is really essential to manage the limited resources that are available in a large event that occurs like a major hurricane. So we focus, I say, a lot on what you do see, but what you don't see and you don't have to worry about is a great relief to managers who have to figure out where they spend the resources that they do have.
Hi, hi, Emery Kelly with Florida Today and USA Today. I think it was mentioned before that there is at least some overlap between 16 and 17 geographically. What is that eastern boundary, if you will? In other words, if there's another major hurricane on the East Coast, can they both look at storm, and is there an advantage to that?
Sure. I think there was a visual earlier by Dr. Voles used of the 2 look angles. We can see primarily most of CONUS with both imagers easily. Once you start looking at a very oblique angle to the Caribbean and others from the GOES West location, we're at 137 west longitude when we're operational. It can be used for some weather in the Caribbean, but we are primarily looking at the Eastern Pacific, the hurricanes in that location. There's a lot of weather that's currently not being seen by the data or the types of instruments that we're flying on GOES 16, so that's going to be huge. But yes, there's a lot of overlap over mostly CONUS. I will say the next panel that's coming in at 2:30 might have some better imagery examples, but we do have a lot of overlap region. But as you can see from online, we have some good images of what the CONUS imagery will look like. And it is rather oblique. It is at a very shallow angle. So our primary instrument, our primary satellite to look at the Caribbean goes east, of course. But the other thing I did want to mention is that some of the things that we'll see with GOES West particularly is I think from the geostationary location, the higher latitudes have been somewhat underserved. You know, we could not see with the spatial resolution that we have in the old imagers a lot of Alaska, for instance. And when we were testing GOES 16, we noted a lot of ice movements in the Hudson Bay, for example, because we were testing it over 90 degrees west longitude, which is roughly New Orleans. And so we were able to see some high latitude information that we previously could not see. So there's a lot of new information that we're very excited about seeing from the western location. So thank you.
And there's an added benefit of overlap as well in that, as Tim was mentioning, you cover most of the continental U.S. with both satellites, mostly with the east, but you now have stereoscopic view.
All right, guys, bringing this picture here of this Brooklyn rescue full screen to you. You can see sort of they've made some progress and they seem to have gotten the construction worker out on that stretcher in the middle of your screen and then moving up towards the left side there as the camera follows it. You can just see the amount of presence with the fire trucks and the amount of FDNY firefighters on hand and medics surrounding it. This has become a little more of an urgent situation than it seemed to have been at the beginning, and it makes you wonder just how many times this type of thing happens. I mean, we don't see these rescues hugely often, but when we do, we often get these sort of alerts and aerial views of it. But again, just so many FDNY members there on hand. You could see with that wide pan out there just how many trucks are on scene there and people surrounding. Probably lots of them, both police, medic, media as well, and rescuing this guy. But they seem to have gotten that blue structure. They had some sort of, there's a cherry picker kind of center of your screen coming towards the middle with some sort of contraption dangling off of it in case there needed to be a lift type of situation. But it seems like they got him out manually on that blue stretcher, and things seem to be good. No reports of sort of the status of that construction worker or what exactly happened to cause this sort of situation. But we're going to flash over now from that scene over back to, like I said, the Gaylord Opryland Resort in Nashville, Tennessee, where the Vice President is coming up shortly. Here's a live look there. This is in Nashville at the 75th Annual National Religious Broadcasters Convention. It's a 4-day event. The Vice President is keynote speaking in just a few moments here, and it's put on by Susan B. Anthony List, which is a pro-life, anti-abortion organization. So the Vice President is soon to speak here. Let's bring up this sound.
And he told them, and Karen did, about what the future was going to look like running for Congress, especially if they were successful. There were going to be sacrifices. It was going to be tough. There would be slings and arrows. People would say nasty things. The polarization wouldn't just be in the newspaper. It would be in their lives, because they knew how seriously they took this human rights issue of our time. So he explained it. They explained it to their children, so they were all on board. It's also the kind of man who looks forward to hearing the words, "Well done, my good and faithful servant," more than he does the pat on the back that he will get along the way. It's the kind of man that is bound more by the word of God and Karen than the word of the New York Times or the words of the Washington Post or the words of political consultants. It's the kind of man who keeps his promises and who, along with the president, took the commitments that he made with the president to the pro-life movement, not only in battleground states, but all over America, and said, if we are elected as a team, we will do these things immediately. And you know what? They did. What a crazy idea. And it's still in progress. It's the kind of man who slays the Planned Parenthood dragon before it's cool, before anyone was talking about it, when they were the Teflon organization. He's the kind of man who is now the life-saving tiebreaker over and over in the U.S. Senate, and the kind of man who is a lobbyist, the best vice president / lobbyist that the U.S. history has ever seen, and is always there to draw the line in the sand about where we must and cannot go when it comes to life. He surrounds himself with people who reflect who he is, the core of who he is. Sarah Macon back here, she's one of them. I've known her since she worked for him, and I know her passion. We know personally so many people that he's surrounding themselves with, and we know what that means when you surround yourself by the people who reflect your mission in life. You're much more likely to fill it out, aren't you? In the face of the great moral evil of our time, Mike Pence has not been silent. He has not backed down. He has, with energy and wisdom and eloquence and integrity, made his voice heard on behalf of the defenseless child and the vulnerable mother who needs him. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Vice President of the United States, Mike Pence.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all. And it is such a joy to be with all of you in this very special place at this Life Issues Luncheon. Would you just share a little bit more of that applause for Marjorie Dannenfelser, one of the great pro-life leaders in the history of this movement? Marjorie, thank you for that overly generous introduction, but more importantly, just thank you. Thank you for your great leadership of the Susan B. Anthony Fund, and the exciting announcement today, which I'll share in just a few minutes about. But it's great to be with all of you today, and to be with so many friends, so many fellow travelers in the cause of life, and also with some great Americans who are gathered with us today. I understand that you've heard from one of the great champions of life in the Congress of the United States, Congresswoman Diane Black, my great friend, is with us here today. And I appreciate her very much, and with the big announcement today, join me in thanking Brad Mattis and the whole team at the Life Institute for all the exciting developments that we'll share today. And lastly, I don't know if he's able to slip in very quietly, but I'm actually told that really not only a dear friend of mine, but a great friend of the cause of life and one of the most clarion conservative voices in the United States of America is actually with us today, traveled with me from Washington, D.C. Dr. Ben Carson is with us today. Dr. Carson, where are you? Ben and I are both delighted to be here, and delighted to be here at the Gaylord Opry Resort and Convention Center for an exciting event, the NRB's National Convention. But to be able to start our day with all of you it means a great deal to me personally. And let me say from the outset, he and I spoke this morning. I told him I was going to be with you all. Allow me to bring greetings from the most pro-life president in American history. I bring greetings from President Donald Trump. To all of you who are gathered here at the NRB's National Convention, to religious broadcasters who made a difference for life, for the cause of faith throughout this country, we thank you. And I'll have more to say to each one of you a little bit later this afternoon. Now let me extol our host today, though, the Susan B. Anthony list. My relationship with the SBA list has been one of the most meaningful of my life. I've witnessed this. Dr. Ben Carson is now in the house. You could give him the kind of welcome that he so richly deserves. Ben, I introduced you before and you weren't here yet. So great job getting 2 ovations. Very special man. I think you all know and appreciate his voice and his personal story that's inspiring the country and doing such an extraordinary job on the President's Cabinet. But back to the SBA Fund, I've known this organization for about 25 years, and I have to tell you, it's an organization that not only stands for life, but has been on the ground standing with women and men who are standing for life in the political process like no other organization in America. And I thank you all for supporting the SBA list. The SBA list directs a constellation of organizations, in their words, an arsenal designed not to hurt, but to heal. And they've played a critical role in the progress that we've made in the cause of life in the decades that have followed. Also, the Charlotte Lozier Institute, represented here today, provides science and statistics for life, the hard data that shapes the debate. The Candidates Fund supports and elects principled pro-life leaders, including more than 110 members of Congress that have been supported by the SBA. And today, the big news is the SBA list has welcomed their newest partner, an organization that literally is changing hearts and minds of millions of people through education since its founding in 1991. Join me in thanking Brad and the whole team at the Life Issues Institute for all the difference that they've made for life. Now, this is a partnership made in heaven. I believe it in my heart, and I do believe that the combination of the SBA list and the extraordinary resources and reach of the Life Issues Institute are going to continue to advance this cause and to change lives. And let me say, as I stand before you today with great humility and gratitude for the support that you've afforded to the President, myself, and our entire administration, I am pleased to report to you that thanks to your support, life is winning in America once again. True. I mean, think about it. From the very first day of this administration, President Trump has been keeping his word. Stand without apology for the sanctity of human life. The President, in our first week, reinstated the Mexico City policy to prevent American tax dollars from funding organizations that promote or perform abortions beyond our borders, and in fact expanded the policy to cover nearly $9 billion in foreign aid. Our administration has stopped U.S. funding of the United Nations Population Fund, so American taxpayers are no longer forced to support abortion around the world. And I can't tell you how proud I was in my role as President of the Senate to cast the tie-breaking vote on a bill the President signed to allow states like Tennessee to defund Planned Parenthood. You know, it was just a little bit over a month ago, President Trump addressed the March for Life in Washington, D.C. from the Rose Garden at the White House. He promised in his words that we would, quote, always defend the first right in our Declaration of Independence, the right to life. And I can assure you the President is keeping that word every single day. And we've been keeping it not simply by the policies of this administration, but this President has been busy appointing strict constructionists to our federal courts at every level, including Justice Neil Gorsuch on the Supreme Court of the United States. These are men and women that will hold the God-given liberties enshrined in our Constitution. And there's more to come. So I hope you all feel encouraged today, because I know I do. Having been in this cause all of my adult life, I see more progress in the last year in the cause of life than I have seen in public policy in all of my years. And you all are the people to thank. It's because of the stand that each of you have taken, the prayers that you've prayed, that we've made the progress that we've made. And I really do believe that life is winning in America for a variety of reasons. Life is winning through the generosity of millions of adoptive families that are opening their homes to children in America every day. And life is winning through the compassion of caregivers and volunteers at crisis pregnancy centers and faith-based organizations that are coming alongside young women with crisis pregnancy with support and with love and encouragement. But life is winning in America ultimately because of all of you and the people that you represent all across this country. It is, as President Trump said, well, it is a movement born out of love. In these divided times in the life of our nation, I couldn't be more proud of the deep compassion of the pro-life movement and the continued commitment to be there, to love them both. But let me admonish you as we go forward in this cause in 2018 to understand that while we have made great progress, we have much work yet to do. The truth is that the opposition is always looking for ways to undo our achievements, and notably in the category of the progress that we've made in the cause of life. You need look no further than a vote in the Congress that took place, right, Diane? Not too long ago. Nearly every Democrat in the United States Senate voted against the Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act. The truth of the matter is that the other side, the other party, continues to go farther and farther to the left, even while Americans, especially younger Americans, are choosing and embracing the sanctity of life more and more every day. And we have to be their voice. So our success going forward in 2018 and beyond depends not so much on those of us that have the privilege of serving in public life as it does on all of you. And so I want to encourage you to continue to stand up, continue to speak out. Those of you that are broadcasters that are gathered here for this convention, I urge you to continue to speak about the cause of life on every platform that you have an opportunity to address. And all of you that have supported the Susan B. Anthony Fund and the combination now with the Great Life Issues Institute, continue to be supported in every way that you can with your time and your talent and your treasure, because the work is essential. The work is timely. And I truly do believe if all of us do all that we can, that we will once again, in our time, restore the sanctity of life to the center of American law. But we have to do the work. So let's do the work. I see some great old friends in the room, and I see great people who are committed to this cause. But let's leave here energized. Let's not grow weary in doing good, for in due time we'll reap a harvest. I mean, for all the progress since 1973, the resilience of this movement proceeding out of the heart of a compassionate nation, I just know in my heart of hearts that this will be the generation that restores life in America. And so I urge you on, but I do so with confidence that good news is around the corner in America. I have boundless faith in the goodness and decency of the American people. I have boundless confidence in that president that you elected and the pro-life majorities in the Congress of the United States and in states all across this country. And I have boundless confidence in him who said, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. And with faith in all those leaders, faith in all of you, and faith in God, I know that together with you, we will once again live in an America that chooses life from our hearts. So thank you very much. God bless you for your great support of the SBA list, your great support of this organization, and God bless the United States of America.
All right, guys, so that was Vice President Pence in Nashville on his second visit to Nashville in his role as Vice President in an event for, like I said, the annual convention for the National Religious Broadcasters Group. It's a big convention, lots of Christian-based media and others from around the globe attending to hear him speak, and put on by the Susan B. Anthony List and Life Institute in collaboration also with the Ohio-based Life Issues Institute. You could see that sort of in the back screen behind the podium where Vice President Pence was speaking. But again, they're expecting about 4,000 people there to listen before he leaves Nashville. Pence is slated to meet with the governor of Tennessee and the Republican group, or Republican Governors rather, Association. So that's Vice President Pence in Nashville. We are going to leave that scene for a second, flash you quickly back to Charlotte, North Carolina, where visitors are continuing to pay their respects to Billy Graham. His casket there on display at the Billy Graham Library until tomorrow, when we'll likely have some cameras up here as his casket will be on view at the U.S. Capitol Rotunda to lie in honor there for 2 days before going back down. You can see tons of public going through, streaming through, minus when some of the notable officials come through, some of the former presidents. It is open for people to swing by. So there are a lot of people doing that. But again, guys, that is going to wrap up our stream today. But all of our coverage continues on all of our digital platforms. Of course, on Facebook, Twitter, our website, fox5dc.com. You can join us there for more coverage. I'm going to leave you with one special thing. And if this doesn't leave you hungry, I don't know what is going to, because check it out. Today is National Pancake Day, guys, and IHOP is giving away some free pancakes. So check IHOPfreepancakes.com or IHOPpancakeday.com, because from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., they're going to be giving away. They only ask that you do one thing, and that is you donate, make a small donation to children's hospitals, which they are supporting for sick kids across the nation. An awesome, awesome effort, guys. So we're going to leave you with that picture. It's making me hungry, that's for sure, because I'm going to go eat something now, and we'll catch you again tomorrow on the stream, guys, here on Fox 5 Live. Thanks for joining us, for hanging out on the stream. Lots of different news today, lots of topics that we're covering, and we just roll with it, whatever comes in live. So we appreciate you guys hanging out and commenting on the stream as well. You know that you can follow us on all of our platforms.
Eat more pancakes.
Fox5dc.com, and eat more pancakes. It looks really good. I'm starving. I'm going to go get some. See you guys tomorrow. Take care, and yeah, listen to the advice of my boss, Kyle. Eat more pancakes. We'll catch you tomorrow.